Good evening. Welcome to the final session of the final day of EGX Rezzed. Thank you all for coming along. I hope you've had a really good show. I've certainly had an awesome time. We're going to end with a bang with a look at Frozen Endzone. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Ian and Paul.
Hello, thank you very much. We are Mode 7 Games. We're probably best known for a simultaneous turn-based strategy title called Frozen Synapse that we released in 2011. But we're currently working on sort of not a sequel, but a kind of follow-up to that, which is called Frozen Endzone. And just in case you haven't seen it, I'm now going to play you a little bit of a trailer and then talk some more after that.
I guess that's... You don't need to hear me talking on the trailer and in real life. That's far too much me for one talk. So this is Frozen Endzone. It's a simultaneous turn-based game, again, which means that you make your plan, your opponent makes their plan, and you watch the outcomes play out together. Unlike Frozen Synapse, when the outcome happens in this game, you get a fully 3D, beautifully rendered version of what happened. And this game is very much about space and positioning. You have to get your units into positions that you think will block off paths for your opponent. At the same time, they're trying to get the ball all the way into that end zone for a score. And there's various other zones on the pitch as well that give you points. You can see the blocks on the pitch here. They're randomly generated terrain, so they basically create a space in which you can work out your plans. The tall blocks, you can't pass the ball over them, and the low blocks, you can't run past them. One of the things we just added to the game is the ability to customize your team and characters. So here you can see just setting a few different stats. You can set things like speed, the radius in which you can intercept the ball. And here's our custom pitch editor that will just enable you to make any pitch you like. It's a dual single-player and multiplayer game, so we've got all the kind of usual multiplayer stuff you expect, like leads and ladders and chat and so on. Working on this game has been really interesting for us because we went from a very small team with virtually no art budget to being able to work with some really fantastic artists who have worked previously on AAA games. Richard Whitelock, our art director, and Martin Binfield, our lead animator. And as you can see there from the wonderful plug, the game is in early access right now. It's been on there for 2 or 3 weeks, and it's just fantastic to be able to get the game out to a wider audience and start seeing what kind of feedback we're getting. We're tweaking the game a lot at the moment. We're making some quite big changes. And Ian, in a minute, is going to be showing you some stuff in-game, and you'll be able to see some of those changes. So the main thrust of our talk today, we thought it'd be interesting to focus on one particular element of Frozen Endzone, which is the single-player AI. Now, in a game like this, you have very few characters per side, and the nature of the game is that one wrong move can really screw you over for the entire rest of your match. So designing AI for something like that is particularly challenging. So we thought it'd be cool to show you some of the process behind that and have this man here, who is the lead designer and lead programmer, kind of talk you through some elements of it. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to say about the game in general while we look at a bit of a match, or if you want to go straight into talking about AI. I guess I'll go straight in. Yes, hello everyone. Thanks for coming to the final talk, and we're really glad that anyone is here at all. And it's really nice that we have an audience. So I'm just going to bring you in game and talk a bit about what we've been doing.
Now, I just would like to point out at this point that I am non-technical and Ian is very technical. So most of what he says, like some of you here, I probably won't understand. So I'm going to be asking questions and trying to figure out just what the hell is going on along with you. So think of me as like your guide to the world of Ian Hardingham.
Lucky you. Okay, so one of the unique challenges with making AI for a game like Frozen Synapse or Frozen Endzone is that when we make games, we start by creating a really competitive multiplayer game. There's no artificial intelligence for the first 18 months or so of development of these games because I'm just head down playing against other people trying to make the game as perfect as it can be for a one-on-one thing. The whole idea is that we can make a great multiplayer game, and then that's a brilliant platform to make a great single-player game. So the artificial intelligence was hard enough even for Frozen Synapse, because in these games there are really obviously good and bad things to do, and unlike an RTS where there are hundreds and hundreds of units, you've only generally got 3, 4, or 5 units to play with. So if the AI does something really stupid, it's really obvious. It's massively important to us that our AI is solid. You have to feel that you are playing against a human in a lot of different ways. Otherwise, the whole game doesn't work. The game was designed to play against humans. The AI needs to be as good as that at that. So what we've got right here is we have a classic turn 2 position in Frozen Endzone. The player is the blue team. Here are his units. Everyone can see the cursor, can't they? Because I'm going to be using the cursor. Yes, you can. That's good. And the bad guys are in red. This guy has the ball. And very simply, he needs to get the ball from where he is to the end zone here. So, for instance, he could run it like that. Let's pause there because that would be where the turn would break and allow you to replan. Or he can throw the ball to someone. So really, the whole core of Frozen Endzone is what you've just seen. It's about getting the ball from the starting location to the end zone, and the defenders have to stop you. From a very simple move set, i.e. just being able to run, just being able to stop, and just being able to throw the ball, we've created what I believe to be a really nice, complicated, really deep game, but that's also quite easy to get into. So, when it came to making artificial intelligence for Frozen Endzone, I started off by thinking about how to mathematically analyze the pitch. The AI needs to understand the pitch, and maybe by using some maths we can work out that, this area here might be a good place for this guy to block. If he goes there, then no one could get through there, and he's cut off a really large number of routes. But as I started investigating that, I found that even using some quite sort of clever algorithms, it was going to happen nowhere near fast enough. There's a huge possibility space here with 10 different agents acting over a few different seconds of time. So I had to go back to Frozen Synapse and further than that, back to what is common in artificial intelligence for bridge games and have a much more combative element. So I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to show you how this doesn't work. Excellent. Hold on. Are we getting peaky through here? Dude, can you talk for a second while I desperately try to make this work?
That's okay. So, like I said, one of the main reasons that we decided to go from something like Frozen Synapse to this is that when we started off making games, or rather when Ian started off making games when we were younger, we really liked those kind of classic PC titles where you had a core idea, and here the core idea is this kind of ridiculous futuristic sport played by robots. But what the developers did then was that they absolutely took that idea and then fleshed it out in the most comprehensive way possible. So they'd have single player and multiplayer. They'd have all the different customization options. They'd have all the different elements of that. Things like being able to name your team, being able to pick your team colors and so on. And I think that still you see with a lot of indie games, they kind of focus around the smaller, kind of higher concept, and they try to make everything about that. But what we wanted to do was just give you loads and loads of features. And that's one of the many reasons why we're incredibly slow to develop any games at all. It really takes us quite a long time. Frozen Synapse took 4 years. I think this one will be coming up to 3 years, and we're going to try and get it out by the end of this year as we see how things go. But a lot of the genesis of this game actually came about through Ian thinking about some of the things that didn't work with Frozen Synapse. that game, I don't know if any of you... Has anyone played Frozen Synapse here? That's a really startlingly large percentage of you. Thank you very much. That's awesome. One of the things about that game, as you well know, is that it's quite an anal game. It's very much about well, not necessarily in every sense of the word. It's about pinpoint precision. That actually makes it sound worse now I think about it. It's about very specifically predicting where your opponent's going to be and inserting your units forcibly into that space. And what we wanted to do in this game was create something that isn't so particularly defined around knowing the exact pixel. It's a bit more about generally trying to understand the shape of your opponent's plan. So, for example, if you get in a situation where you're throwing the ball deliberately to your opponents, you can actually snooker them quite well in this game by spreading your units out to block off all the potential passing vectors from where you threw the ball. So you still have that nice kind of one turn ahead thinking thing, but without the sort of, if my shotgunner comes out behind this window at 0.01 of a second later, then I'm going to lose. So, Ian, how are you going on with your ninja
It's still
coding?
not going great, but you're doing a good job.
Well, that's nice. We can always talk about something else.
Yeah, I'll give you one more second to try and make this work.
All right.
This definitely worked when I left the house. I can promise you that.
I guess we can find, if anyone has any questions or anything about Frozen Synapse or Frozen Endzone, we could do that now.
That would be a good time
while
to do
Ian's
that.
faffing around. And then at the end, we could kind of return back to this. So there is a man, and he is approaching the microphone. Yeah, so if you guys have any questions at all about anything about game development, about our games in particular, then please feel free to now approach the microphone. Yes, one person.
What do you need? I'm really loud. What do you need in a core team? Because I know you said there's only like 3.5 of you to make the last one.
Yeah.
So, what roles were they, and how important was it, and what was nice about being in a small team?
Thank you. That's a great question that I can ramble on at great length in order to
That is
cover.
actually a perfect question.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So basically, I think when you're developing a game, you absolutely need someone who has the design vision, obviously, but I think perhaps more importantly than that, you need someone who has the coding ability to execute that design. Now, in most indie teams, that person is the same person. I mean, I know of a few where there's a distinct designer and, either one coder or a group of coders, but you absolutely need to have that kind of coding muscle there. Code is also the hardest thing to outsource.
And the most expensive.
And the most expensive from design. So once you get to that position, you can outsource, any of your art that you want to, and that's sort of easier to plug in than anything else. I mean, when we started off, it was really Ian who did all the design and coding, me who kind of filled in the gaps, and I did art direction. I would be the person finding the, freelance artists to work with, giving them direction, and Robin, who is a level designer and tester. And he would be the person that worked on a lot of the sort of low-level detail stuff for everything. Bit unusual to have someone like that in an indie team. And then we work with like a bunch of other freelance artists. In terms of what's nice about it, I mean, I think it's just from like a project management perspective. Now we have 7 people. That's a lot of my time that's spent like running around and Ian's time as well to try and fill in those gaps. So with 3 people, you're pretty much always on the same page of like what you're working on and all that kind of thing. Whereas with 7, it's a bit amorphous. I'm not nostalgic for the like 3-person days. Are you like?
No, I mean all the really, really annoying things like producing builds, sort of rapidly fixing bugs with the server at 2 o'clock in the morning and stuff. I'm really glad I don't have to do that anymore. In fact, the person who has to do that is James, sitting right
yes,
there.
There is
and,
another Mode 7-ite here. There's James.
You have no idea how many times I'm drunk because James exists, so that's great. We have now fixed this problem.
Well done. That's excellent.
Which
we can have a look at some artificial intelligence.
So Paul's actually here to tell me if I'm being boring, so I'm just going to ramble on even more than usual.
At the moment, it's kind of borderline, so you can...
That's good. He's going to take off his clothes if it gets a bit boring, aren't you? Right, good. So this is how the AI works. The first team, the team with the ball, the AI produces a plan for the guy to get to the end zone. Literally any plan. It does not matter what it is. As you can see here, the first one that's come up is just the guy running down, pretty much like the example I showed you. All that is required is that the guy gets the ball to the end zone. And the next step is that the defense has to find a way to stop him. Again, it really doesn't matter what he does. The whole beauty of this algorithm is that it does not require at this stage the AI to ever do the best thing, just that it does something that works. It's found that for whatever reason, this is the defense that it's chosen. He's going to run down there and he will eventually tackle the guy. Now, what happens is, this is then done many, many, many times. What happens, I'm just going to skip through this for a second, so we can get a nice block. Right, so I'm just going to run through this a little bit of time. So what it's doing is, it's creating lots and lots of different plans for the ball carrier to get in the end zone. And the defense is starting to build up a range of plans that it can see, and it's trying to work out how to defeat loads and loads at once. I'm just going to go through a bunch of steps and then show you what we've come up with. So we've gone through a load of different offensive plans, and the defensive guys have come up with 3 different things that they would like to do. That's one guy there. So the first guy is going down here. Now he has calculated that will defeat all of these different offensive plans. So where this starts to become coherent and starts to work is that any single defense was fine of any offensive plan to start with. But as you start getting a huge number of offensive plans together, then the best plans start to emerge. The more and more offensive plans you have, even if they're largely similar, the better the defense will be at choosing the right thing to do. And now I'm going to try and do a full run and show, which may take a couple of minutes, and show the eventual result. Frozen Synapse does something very similar, although slightly more sort of horizontal than this. It says, how would I beat this guy if he did nothing? And then the opposition says, if he's going to do that, how would I beat him? And then the first team goes back. A big back and forth of trying to beat each other's plans until you have something which is sort of so well iterated that it's to a human like a very good plan. And this is another version of that, basically. It's a way of reducing the mathematical space on the field to things that the computer might actually do and a player might actually do. This is the long loading times we've been talking about happening right now.
I was actually just wondering, like, with the plan you showed, there's actually quite sane. Like, that is a plausible plan that someone might do. Does it, like, filter out weird stuff?
It filters out, it tries to only choose plans which would be at all legitimate. So, so going back on yourself, that kind of thing is not going to work. So this has happened now.
Because I've certainly, it feels like the AI kind of encourages you to play oddly sometimes, which I guess is good because you're like forced to be more creative. Like sort of standard play against the AI is actually weaker in some ways, I think.
Fair enough. I think that's probably fair. So that has run sort of several thousand times and has come up with what I hope to be a total coverage of every possible offensive plan. Now, they can't cover everything with one defense because then the game would be solved. But with these 4 different plans, supposedly, every single, and the last plan here only has the guy on the very far left doing anything. Supposedly, if I was able to do all 4 of these plans on defense, I would cover absolutely everything. And once you've done that, the rest is relatively simple. So you've got a total coverage of the offensive stuff, and then we can choose... Don't crash. Okay, so the actual final result is that the defense wants to do this. This is what has been calculated will cover by far the most things, and that's nicely quite sensible. This guy going down here has a really nice coverage of here. As you can probably just tell, it's done a nice partitioning of the field, and what's really good is this guy up here has done something really aggressive, covering any passing lanes around here. So we're really happy with that. It's very hard to make this kind of thing have the AI do anything intelligent at all, so it's pretty proud to have got to this point.
Was there a point during this when you were designing it and you thought maybe this isn't going to be fun to play against because it's a bit more a bit too literal? Because I think that was something you talked about.
Kind of a bit too much. What? Sorry.
Not fun to play against. Like it's too sort of literal about predicting what you might do, so it doesn't really leave any gaps open. Yeah,
I definitely think there was a period before I started working on it where I thought that the sheer pleasure of beating another human being would be unreplicable in single player. It was sort of a problem I had with FS, so I was concerned about it with FS, and I was concerned about it here. And it turns out that that's baseless. Once the AI is good enough that you really feel like you are battling the computer, the pleasure is still there. People still like beating computers. They still like to feel like they've won. The key is just to never make it easy.
Yeah.
It's got to be legitimately hard.
Right.
And as soon as it started being legitimately hard, I saw people were loving playing it and saying yes when they beat the AI in the right way.
It's kind of funny when you see a lot of competitive games, particularly RTS, with the main single-player component is like this ridiculous circus that's built around the mechanics with like giant snakes coming up out of the ground and spaceships crashing into stuff. And the actual core of the competitive game, people don't really tend to try and make AI for that. I mean, although like the StarCraft AI is kind of okay, it's like nobody who's seriously played multiplayer more than twice would ever want to play against it. So with this, it's like, this is almost a sort of halfway house between those two things, because this is genuinely competitive, but it still can't do the stuff that a real player would do in terms of reacting to like your personality of how you're playing.
That's right. The AI doesn't know what your general the general things that you would do are. I mean, the reason why it's so impossible to make AI for StarCraft is that the space is just too large. Chess is something that the AI is pretty good at, and that's because it's something which is sort of very narrow but very deep. It's something which requires a lot of memory and a lot of processing, but it does not require a huge number of different parts of our brain being used at once. I think Endzone is sort of somewhere on the barrier of being a big enough space to be a really interesting game, but also small enough to, in some ways, have the AI sort of work out. Just before I finish this, I'm just going to show you through a couple of the offensive plans that our AI has produced. So during the creation of the defensive plans, as I say, we come up with hundreds and hundreds of offensive plans. Once we have worked out what a good defense thing to do is, we start working out the kind of plans that might defeat some things. So here we have a pass into the middle. These little blue areas get a score. So the AI tries to get those on the way if possible, and then I don't know if I can. Oh, I can keep walking, and then he'll go down there. Now, one of the defensive plans will beat all of these offensive plans, but we don't know which one, basically. So through really quite a simple core concept, hopefully explained reasonably understandably, of just making a load of very simple offensive plans and then trying to beat them, we've actually sort of come out with a load of things that the player might do, and that's what produces sort of good AI, basically.
One of the things I like about this is that it's a little bit like the way a person plays the game. Like you're trying to figure out, I mean, this does it in a sort of more raw and mathematical way in terms of like it picks loads and loads of plans. But you do think like, what are the 5 non-mental things that my opponent could do here, and like how can I cover as much of that as possible?
Right.
I think what do you think about sort of, is there ever any correlation between like the way a person would approach a problem and the way an AI should approach the problem? Does that lead to better gameplay, or is
I would say when you're trying to make an AI like that's kind of the first thing that I would want to look at, because there are so many different ways of solving an artificial intelligence problem, but probably the best is to try and get the AI to actually simulate a human rather than play the game as well as possible.
Yeah.
So that's definitely what I was going for.
Cool. I want to talk a little bit about the new pitch, actually, because you can actually see that. One of the things, we can't show you a picture of this, but we're taking the game in a little bit of a different direction. I think because of the name and because of the sort of American football influence, a lot of people think it's literally a football game, like they think it's Madden with robots. So one of the things that we're doing is we're actually kind of taking it in a more futuristic direction. So we've recently redesigned the pitch. It doesn't have stripes on it anymore. It has these sort of Frozen Synapse referencing patterns on it that looks really nice. We also don't have dual uprights at the back that look like a football goal. We've got this kind of single column thing, which still retains the like nice composition of having a big tall thing, but doesn't necessarily make people automatically think that it's an American football goal that's going to be used by an American football man, an American football suit, an American football ball, kicking the American football over and scoring the American football field goal. So we're really trying to make something that's kind of a lot more unique and distinctive, say like Speedball or Blood Bowl or something that's identifiably not a real sport. But as soon as people play the game, they get really excited about it as a strategy game. A lot of people are saying that they like it more than Frozen Synapse, which is always encouraging. When you've done something that people like, you tend to be absolutely terrified that nobody will like the next thing you do.
It was a very unique problem to have. We worked very hard to get some gameplay we really liked, and the gameplay isn't changing. I'm really, really proud of it. But to come out and have anyone who played it really like it, but the first thing they said, I thought this was an American football game, and it's not. Eventually we realised that wasn't just something people say that isn't a problem was actually a problem.
Yeah.
So after about a couple of weeks ago, we just decided to go for it, change the shape of the ball, change the name, change a couple of things Paul's talking about, because we want you to see the game the way we see the game, which is an awesome, weird future sport, not a reskin of a boring real-life sport.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've been in this industry for 12 years now, and we've seen every single kind of problem, and we've made every single kind of mistake. And I was hoping that we were going to make less mistakes. But
this is a new, different
mistake.
Exactly. That we're working on. But that's kind of one of the joys of early access, is you can actually see, you know, how people respond to stuff and tweak these things. And we're really happy with it. People seem to really like the game, and the press seem to like it as well. I think before we kind of wrap up and maybe take a few more questions, I'd quite like to talk about some of our plans for single player. So at the moment, when you buy the game, you get some single player skirmishes that use Ian's new AI, and you get kind of pretty fully fledged multiplayer. But we've got this idea for, we're calling it campaign mode, really, I guess, which is a very, very in-depth single player that's actually based around simulating an entire world around the sport. So not just simulating matches, but simulating what players do in their time off, simulating what the other coaches in the league are like, their personalities and motivations, and putting that all together. So Ian's got some pretty big plans for that.
Yeah, I mean, very much inspired by sort of Dwarf Fortress and the idea of this living world, and every time you play it, it is something new. All of the things that are stupid and funny that happen in sports are only stupid and funny because they're within the context of the real world. These are people doing these things, and these things have real implications for the sport and the world going forward. So many sports games will just create a random event, like your player got injured, your player got drunk in a bar, your player got divorced, something like that. But those events don't come from anywhere, and their implications are only very small ranging. They only mean that you have to do something special for the next 5 minutes. I want to make a game where your players get in a fight because they were in the same bar as one of the opposing team's players. And that's because we were simulating where the players are at all times. So, for instance, you have a big randomly generated city, and on the week of the game, when the game's in your city, your opposing team will fly in on a Thursday, you'll be choosing where they'll be staying, and then all these things will organically happen. We also are going to have a council of coaches. There'll be 8 teams in the single-player mode, and each will be fronted by a really characterful, well-drawn coach. They'll be talking to you all of the time, proposing trades, trash-talking you when you lose, being very angry when you beat them, and there'll be lots of things that you can vote on. Manipulating the council will be a really big deal, and you'll be able to change the rules of the game. You'll be able to change how many points a touchdown is worth, that kind of thing. So we really want to take modern, sort of roguey world design, build it around what I believe to be a really fantastic core gameplay, or sort of combat in RPG terms, and produce a living, breathing sports world.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm looking forward to doing, as I'm responsible for the writing on the game, is that when you're playing a match against another coach, we'll actually use the AI to analyze your play. So the data that Ian's been showing you, the AI can get out of the game. The coach will know that, and they'll talk to you about it. They'll talk to you about how risky your play was. They'll mock you for it, that kind of thing. We've not really seen that done before. A lot of sports games tend to use audio commentary, which is obviously a lot less flexible than text. Because we're using text, we can really kind of go in depth into making those characters feel real and giving them a huge different range of reactions. So the commentary system that's in-game right now uses that already, but it'll be really cool to have that with loads of different characters all interacting. One of the things people say they want from the game right now is more personality, and I think we're really literally injecting that. We're trying to create personalities and put them in the context of the game.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest struggles of modern game development in the indie way is with all this early access, Kickstarter, betas and everything, you're always showing an unfinished product, and it's really a kind of a pick your poison about what's unfinished. It was really important to us to get the core gameplay right, to get the game looking like the game is going to look before we show it to anyone, because people are very literal and they will react to exactly what they see. And the single player and the campaign, and in some ways the personality, is what we decided to do last. So it's always a unique journey, even with all these new ways, which are much better than just having one single release, no chance to make a mistake and then correct it. It just throws up new challenges.
It is indeed a unique and beautiful journey, sometimes fraught with peril. Right, well, thanks very much for watching this and engaging with our sort of somewhat rambling, but I hope interesting range through Frozen Endzone. I think we've got a little bit more time for some questions, so if anyone would like to ask one, please approach the microphone of Destiny.
And please don't ask me why my wife is annoyed with me today, because I won't answer.
Yeah, don't ask that.
You said earlier that the AI filters stupid ideas.
Right.
At what point do you decide that's a stupid idea, so the AI is going to discount it as a plan?
I think it's more that the systems that come up with the ideas are fairly limited in themselves. So if you tell the computer that it needs to get to the end zone without doubling back on itself, for instance, that's going to cut away a huge number of sort of stupid ideas. Trying to combine that with getting a creativity so that you're not like really constraining what the AI can be hard to do. But there is a stage in the processing near the very end where it chops off a load of plans saying, a different plan did this better. So the answer to your question most literally is we start off with some stupid plans, but because we don't generate so many and because we have a system for telling when one is obviously better than the other, that's how a stupid plan is gotten rid of, if that makes sense.
Thanks.
It looks an awesome game.
Thank you.
When it's finally finished, how many maps and teams? I know there's going to be 8, but will you add any more teams after that?
In single player, we'll be simulating a lot of different leagues. So there'll be 8 at the top level, which will be when you're mostly playing. But we'll also have a foreign league, a college league, a minor league. So there'll be like over sort of 250 simulated teams in single player. Now they'll only differ in kind of colours and AI and attributes. In terms of visually,
what we've got to add in is like really extensive colour customization. So at the moment you only have sort of random colours. We'll let you pick colours and do that in the best way that we possibly can. We already let you name players, so that kind of adds an element to your team. And also I don't know what our plans are for armor yet. We'd like to do some stuff where you can swap in like different shoulder pads and different stuff like that, just to give it a bit of personalization. If you buy one of the packages on early access right now, when the game launches, you'll get a special team that's unique only to that. So we are kind of looking into that stuff. In terms of stadiums, I think we're almost certainly going to have another one, so that'll bring the total to 3. They're quite difficult to make. There's a lot of art involved with them. I sneakily like to try and get it up to 4 if we have time. I don't know if we will, but you can see that there's quite a lot of different elements to a stadium, like the big skybox and all of the surrounding pitch stuff. So we just have to see how we go, but we really want to like kind of, as I said, flesh it out and like do as much of that stuff as we can. So
it really is a classic indie problem. The nicer you make anything look, the harder it is to make a lot of different parts of it. You know, we're using generated content here, you know, not as much as a lot of other games. It's so difficult to toe that line correctly.
Can you put the cursor on the Peachoid real quick?
Oh yes, look at this.
This is a placeholder object which shouldn't be in the game right now, which we've nicknamed the Peachoid, and that is being a placeholder for trophies that you'll be able to put in your stadium. So if you do something like win the league you have with your friends, you'll get a trophy. You can put that in your stadium, and then anyone who plays you will be able to see that. But it won't look like a giant peach by the end of development. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. This is kind of a more general question, but I read an article in Edge magazine a while ago about you guys, and it seemed it was very difficult for you initially when you were starting out. So that's kind of I graduated 6 months ago. I'm a sound designer. I'm trying to come into the industry, find a way in. So if you were to give some advice to people like me, what kind of things would you say if you're just starting out, trying to get into the games industry? What would your advice be, just in general?
Oh, that's a good question, because my background was actually in sound and music. That's how I got into indie games. Basically, I think the only thing that will really benefit you massively at this point is meeting people. So you're obviously here at an event. There's loads of developers to talk to. As long as you have like a good show reel, which I assume you do, and you have prior work that you can show to people, then really, really overwhelmingly, the only thing is meeting developers, talking to them about what they need, getting introduced to their friends who need sound designers, all that kind of thing. And having great work really helps, but it's pretty much just networking. I mean, I knew Ian from school, and he told me he was making a game that he needed music for it, and I was like, wow, I get to make music for a game, awesome. So I did that, and then we sort of decided that we wanted to carry on working together after I left university, and I got more involved with the business, and kind of my role changed. With an indie team, you end up doing loads of different things. So I just think be open to being in a team, talk to loads of people, and that's all you can do, really.
Yeah, that's definitely why I'm here, but I'm from Northern Ireland, and to be quite frank, the games industry there is really
Yeah.
Well, non-existent. So if you know any developers, tell them to come to Belfast because it's
Sure
there's nobody
thing.
there. You know, it's ripe for the taking.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the other side, Paul's talking from one side of this. If you're going to make your own games, I think that the biggest tip I have this month is try not to be too focused on what's happening around you. The stuff that people talk most about tends to be the thing that is going to be old tomorrow. So you want to be the thing that people are talking about when you release your game. And the only way to do that really is to ignore everything that's going on and have a singular vision and really believe in it. So in terms of making your own game, that's probably the biggest
Yeah,
tip
definitely. That is a really important point, actually. Like, definitely keep your own personality to things you do, and that will apply to you as well. If you're like the sound designer that does amazing vehicles, or the sound designer that does, find a niche for yourself. Like, that's, I guess.
Thanks so much.
Hope that was useful. Hello.
Hi.
Hiya. So, obviously, at the start of the game, your AI has to run through the methods to generate ideas and, cull them down into the optimal strategy. Does that sort of lead to the situation where the AI always responds the same way at the start of the match? Is that a problem?
Right, so the key to our games in general is that the terrain and the positioning of your players is randomly generated each time. Anyway, it's an interesting question you ask, and even in multiplayer games it bores me massively that you always start in the same position. I don't want to spend the first 10 minutes every game doing the same thing. That just makes me angry, to be honest. And this was my most direct response to that. I want the game to be different straight away. I think card games are often very exciting because the first thing that happens is that you pick up a new hand. It's very exciting, it's right at the beginning. That's where you should front load your excitement in that way. In terms of sort of a more sort of boring answer to your question on the AI, we have to put randomization in. If the AI was ever predictable, if it always did the shortest path, or the longest path, or the path that went blah, 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 a human would learn those rules and be able to react to it. So randomization is massively important here.
All right, thanks.
Thanks.
Great, I think that's all our questions for today. Any more? No last minute takers. So if we can say a huge thank you to Ian and Paul for closing Rezzed this afternoon with a really interesting presentation. If we can show them in the typical way, please.
Thank you very much. You've been a great audience.
Hope to see you all at Rezzed again next year. Thanks.
Yes,
Thank
big thanks to everyone at Eurogamer and Rezzed for having us here. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. That was all right. Oh, better take this off. It was terrible.
I think that went...